We don't usually hear much about this Kiwi footballer who's been playing in England since he was a teenager.
Wood with the header on the back post, he was all on his own. Now tries to beat Dunk on the outside.
Yes!
Wood from 1 yard. It's another goal for Chris Wood, 16 for the season. It's Chris Wood. Trent End runs up now, right foot, low into the corner, sends the goalkeeper the wrong way and celebrates with his teammates in front of the Trent End. Another hat-trick for Chris Wood.
But last weekend he made headlines even here in New Zealand, where the round ball game can be barely visible. He was player of the match and scored 3 of the 7 goals in Nottingham Forest's thrashing of Brighton in the English Premier League, the world's top football competition.
Well, there is the full-time whistle, and it's Nottingham Forest's greatest day in results terms in the Premier League for 34 years.
Kia ora, I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, Chris Wood, the player making big waves in the UK and who's tipped to lead the All Whites into another famous era of overachievement. He's recently re-signed for Nottingham Forest, where the fans shout his name and even make up viral songs about him.
Yes, there was a man, a special boy, and he was really, really good. From New Zealand.
That TikTok gem is getting radio time in the UK and also here, thanks to the boys from Between Two Beers.
It slaps. I'm going to play it.
And maybe in Forest's locker room too.
Yes, I've heard it. I've been tagged in it a few times and things like that. I think I might have to put it into the playlist for the boys before the game to keep them happy.
Yeah, how good?
How good is Chris Wood?
The most prolific and lethal striker in the league based on his goal conversion rate.
And this was before the weekend's extravaganza.
This season for Nottingham Forest, he's played 22 games. He's scored 14 goals in those 22 games, 2 assists. He's only had 23 shots on target. He's the 4th equal goal scorer in the Premier League, tied with Cole Palmer, who's the best player in the league at the moment. 41 total shots, a goal conversion rate of 34%.
I would probably say he's New Zealand's greatest male footballer.
The hardest job on a football pitch in England is to score goals in that league. It's not the great goalkeeper or the number 10 or the wingers, it's scoring the goals. So he's doing that in the best league in the world, which elevates him right up there. And it's him and Winton, hard to split them.
When you're being compared favourably to Winton Rufer by former All-White Noel Barkley, you know you're good. Of course, when you play for Forest and your name is Wood, you're a gift for the football poets, but in this case, he deserves the plaudits.
He's probably turned his reputation around quite a lot from being just sort of almost like an understudy from the top strikers in the league to being one of the top goal scorers this season. It's a good indicator of someone who can be quite humble, and he's a hard worker and has clearly sort of stepped up his game in the last sort of 18 months and made himself a bit more of a star.
Matthew Nash is RNZ's football correspondent, and he's English, so he knows about football. He's also a long way from the saturation back page coverage that football gets in the UK. But Wood is a Kiwi tall poppy, so why aren't we hanging on his every word?
Football certainly isn't the main sport for media coverage in New Zealand, and he's also probably not benefited from playing for, and fans of some of his clubs will forgive me, but less glamorous sort of football teams. He was at Burnley for a long time. He played a style of football that wasn't exactly eye-catching. And also his personality. He is very down to earth. He's not out showboating. He's not making headlines for any other reason than the back page. So there's none of that sort of factor about it. And I think maybe that's partly why that he's sort of under the radar. Now he's obviously in a team that's in a surprise race for the top 4 in the Premier League, and he's challenging sort of those bigger established names. He seems to be getting a little bit more of a coverage, if you like, here and abroad actually. But he's often, I consider him something of a forgotten striker in the Premier League, and people forget the amount of goals he's scored. I mean, he's approaching the 100 club, so he'll join an elite level of players who've scored 100 goals in the Premier League, which really demonstrates that consistency that he has. But yeah, I think it's a combination of various things there that make him a unfortunately sometimes maybe a little bit overlooked in those sporting circles in New Zealand. I guess another thing is, he represents New Zealand at football with the All Whites regularly, but we rarely get to see the All Whites playing football, especially in the last sort of 5 years. Over here, they were away from home for a very long time due to COVID. So he hasn't often got that national team coverage, which is obviously, I've found since I've been here, New Zealand in particular have a great pride in the national teams and how they perform.
That lack of attention on the All Whites could be about to change dramatically, but we'll get to that later. But first, who is Chris Wood? Where is he from? And how did he get to where he is now?
I read that you developed quite early. You were a big lad from a young age. Were you playing football and rugby at a good level?
Played a bit of both. Rugby not really a good level. I just played through the schools. That was just because I got bullied.
Really?
Yeah, I got bullied for playing football. So
you got bullied for playing football?
For playing football. So that's the difference. It's like if you're in England, you play some other sport.
Yeah.
You get bullied for not playing football, don't you? But back in New Zealand, if you don't play rugby, I got bullied. So I was like, well, I'm a big lad, I'm not having this. So I showed them and knocked a few of them about, and then it was a bit of respect came back.
Wow.
Because they're like, well, we ain't messing with him. So.
He's a big lad.
I think it was just because I was lucky I was 6 foot by the time I was 13.
Wow, 6 foot.
That is mainly around about that.
Huge.
Yeah, I was a big, maybe not 6 foot, but I was big for my age,
yeah.
Definitely. But I was playing men's football by the time I was 14 and a half, 15, and then of course my career took off from there.
These days, it doesn't take much hunting to find Wood's life story explained by some YouTuber, like this one from Ped Talk Sports.
Wood began his football journey in New Zealand, scoring on his senior career debut in the NRFL Division 2 at just 14 years old. He impressed in his home country, performing both at the domestic level and even representing New Zealand in the international level at the Under-17 World Cup. There had been buzz around his name ever since he won a tournament with his first senior team, Cambridge. Wood had performed unbelievably, but teams found out that he was actually under the minimum age of 15, causing a lot of controversy. He was a massive lanky kid, so nobody questioned his age in the beginning. At his next club, Waikato FC, he continued playing well. So well that his coach Roger Wilkinson recommended Wood to the West Bromwich Albion Academy.
Wood signed his first professional contract in 2009, just the 5th New Zealand player to join the English Premier League.
It's a big thing to be a part of the only 6 Kiwis ever to play in the Premier League. It's huge.
Initially, he bounced around a bunch of clubs, not really impressing, until he landed at Leicester, helping them to qualify for the Championship playoffs. But for career development reasons, he moved to Leeds, then Burnley, then Nottingham Forest.
The New Zealand international has been destroying Premier League centre-backs with his physicality and positioning in the box. Ever since joining Forest, he has been scoring for fun. And here's the best part. Not only is he regularly scoring, but he's making an impact in some of the biggest games.
I'd say that's probably one of his main strengths is his aerial ability. He's very strong in the air. I think probably his main strength is knowing his strengths. He plays to his game, to his style quite well. He's big, he's strong, he's good in the air, he's good with both feet. But I think he's improved his game quite a lot probably from when he first came through. He really sort of found himself in a spell at Leeds United in the Championship, the second tier in England, which is where he really started to find goals more frequently. And since going up to the Premier League, he's just become consistent in front of goal. I mean, the guy scores. He's almost guaranteeing you 10 goals a season at least, which is why I think, teams have looked at him since then, and he's had that spell at Newcastle, which was curtailed a little by injury, and they went and signed someone for 85 million, who's turned out to be one of the best strikers in the league, and he found himself sort of shipped out to Nottingham Forest, and it's turned out to be a brilliant move for the guys. So yeah, he's someone who I think knows his capabilities and what he can do, and he executes it almost perfectly every time he plays.
He's been described as old-fashioned. Why is that? Are they talking about a style of play or his personality, or a bit of both?
Possibly a bit of both. I think he's definitely old-fashioned in his style of play, and Nottingham Forest really cater for his needs. They've got 2 wingers out wide who get the ball into the box quite quickly to him, and people around him to do the pacier stuff, but he's got that intelligence and strength, I think, that is probably more synonymous with sort of the early Premier League days. And his personality, I suppose, is old-fashioned in that he's no nonsense, but he's also, I think, quite modernised in the way he's clearly looked after himself, and I think his lifestyle is very conducive to being a 33-year-old player finding his best form now rather than in his late 20s. So I think he's kind of a bit of a blend between that old school style, but actually probably in terms of off the pitch, he's probably more of a modern footballer in how he sort of looks after himself.
Okay, so he's not flying around in private jets with a tiger on board or anything like that?
I don't really think that's his style. I think, he's grew up in the Waikato and born in Auckland. I don't think that's the flashy style of a Kiwi footballer. It doesn't strike me as the way that they go about their business. That's probably more suited to people from my neck of the woods, I think.
And he's just re-signed for Nottingham Forest. Do we know, their salary's public? Do we know what he got for that?
They're not public. I mean, it's speculation always. But he'll be, I imagine, among one of the top earners at the club, and I'm sure he'll be very well compensated for his brilliant form and have the right bonuses in there to make sure that he's getting what he deserves. Like I say, it might be his last big deal. He might have another one in him, but it's definitely a contract that's going to set him up very well for retirement. Which, as you say, 33 years old will be on his mind now.
And 33, is that peak football, or is that starting to get on the downhill a bit? Because he seems to now be in a team that's almost built around him, his skills.
I think because of the way he plays the game. He's also been enormously lucky. Probably he hasn't had a serious injury that I can think of off the top of my head. I think he's had a few things here or there, but when it comes to strikers, there's been plenty of strikers in the Premier League whose careers have dropped off pretty fast after 30. But he seems to be getting better with age. And he's just signed a new deal which will keep him at Nottingham Forest till he's 35. And people might say that was his last chance to get a big deal. But looking at the way his trajectory is going, it wouldn't be a surprise if he's still got one more sort of big move in him at 35, wherever he decides to go after that. So I think in most cases, 33, you would start thinking this is probably the end game, but his fitness record and current sort of form suggest otherwise. Definitely, he has that intelligence because he's not. I imagine he'd be the first to say he's not the quickest striker in the Premier League, so he sort of has to have that be one step ahead up in his brain compared to some of the centre backs. And he scored a recent goal against Liverpool, which was really indicative of that. Liverpool's two centre-backs extremely fast and can give themselves usually a yard to catch up. But what Chris Woodward did was just drift a little bit further out wide, give him an extra yard to find an early finish and score a really good goal against, probably the best goalkeeper in the world in Alisson.
Forward to Elanga. Elanga forward for Wood. Inside left channel. Great shot! Yes! Forrester ahead! It's Chris Wood!
I think he could probably claim to be New Zealand's greatest footballer if he took him to another World Cup, which is looking very promising with the new qualification system. And if he was to perform at the level he's been performing at the Premier League, take New Zealand to the next Men's World Cup in 2026 and potentially cause a stir like they did last time. I think Chris Wood is the poster boy of the All Whites. Definitely, he's the standout. There was a fantastic reception when he had a homecoming game in Hamilton recently. You could see that there was a lot of kids there from clubs all over the Waikato Bay of Plenty, in particular, who got to see him play for the first time because usually the games were in Auckland or Wellington, and you could see on their faces that they were so pleased to see him playing and scoring goals and in front of their very eyes. But he will be the person who sort of spearheads any World Cup qualification for the All Whites. He had that world-class experience of playing against some of those top players at the World Cup. He's used to competing at level that will possibly give him the edge and potentially, hopefully, give New Zealand a chance of making a dent in North America in 18 months' time now.
Okay, let's have a look at the state of the beautiful game in New Zealand because things are most definitely looking up. Noel Barkley is a former All-White who, until Chris Wood came along, held the record for the number of New Zealand Player of the Year titles.
I've been watching Chris along the way as he charged past my 3 times, and I think he's now about 6. So I guess that's my trivia question as well. Who's won it more than me? And he most certainly has.
Wow. I guess in a way, Chris Wood is the reverse you. You came from Ireland to play for New Zealand, and he, on the other hand, has left New Zealand to go at a quite young age to the UK. So must know a little bit about how he's feeling and how things work over there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to draw parallels between him and I, but yes,
we will.
apart from me coming here and him going there is very true. Well, he was very young, of course, and I was married and sort of 23, so a little bit different. Also going into a totally professional environment where he's a Kiwi. They don't really warm to people coming in, especially English clubs, when you got a Kiwi or an Aussie or coming into the country. So it would have been incredibly tough. And for him to develop as a player and, battle early on in his career in the UK, but eventually, got his breaks and obviously bounced around a few clubs. But he got better and better and better. And, he's obviously stuck it out. He only recently got married, so I'm not quite sure how long he was on his own for. But he's been there a long time. The chances of him coming back to New Zealand are pretty slim in the next couple of years because he's just signed another contract. But has had an incredible career. He's fought off being moved around and not getting played, and he had a few injuries and so on. But this year has just been something out of this world, really. I mean, it just every week it just ceases to amaze everybody, not just football fans.
In New Zealand, those football fans are becoming louder thanks to the entry of an Auckland team joining the Wellington Phoenix in the Australian League.
Here we are, World Cup next year, 26. Chris Wood, the captain, in his prime.
So he will come back?
He always comes back. So the other thing about him, he just loves playing for his country. He's played 80 times, scored 41 goals. He even comes back when he's injured. So the games that they play in New Zealand is usually against, Tonga or Fiji or Samoa. And they don't need Chris Wood for those games. But he still comes back because it's in the FIFA window. He has the right to come back. He came back once last year, I think it was, and he was injured. He just came back to sit on the bench. To be around the squad, to help the young players, and that's his value to the All Whites. And I think from what I'm reading about what's happening at Nottingham Forest, because they're all those players around him are all young kids, they're all early 20s, he's having that same effect. And I heard the Nottingham Forest owner say that he was worth as much off the pitch as he is on the pitch. And obviously he's a great leader, and it bodes well for World Cup in the Americas next year.
OK, let's talk about that, because if you're a certain age, you think about the 82 All Whites as being our premier, prime, amazing team that went to a World Cup and did so well. If you're a bit younger, you probably think about 2010, where we were the only country to not lose a game. Great trivia question. What's the scenario for this year? Because the qualifying's even easier, isn't it? The Oceania changes.
Yeah, well, it's easier because FIFA have expanded the World Cup from 32 to 48 teams, and obviously that's a real financial driver. What it does for New Zealand is it means that they get a fairly easy road. They still got to go and beat Fiji and somebody else in the final, depending who.
We don't have to beat Australia, though.
No, we don't have to beat Australia, but we'd give Australia a good run these days. They're not going so good, and they're struggling to qualify this time because them being in Asia, the Asian football is very strong, and they're not.
Well, okay,
so
so Australia's not part of Oceania, then?
No, they moved out. They didn't like the competition in Oceania, and they decided to go to Asia. Now they've always been able to qualify. This time around it just looks a bit tougher. So yeah, we'll be there. There's a final playoff game on 24th of March, and that's at Eden Park, and it'll be hopefully a full house, and sending them off for a big payday for New Zealand football and the players for getting there, but also a couple of games, and because there's so many teams, that the chances of them getting games that they could potentially win are real. So it's a different. 82 was legacy.
Mission accomplished. New Zealand's finest footballing hour.
We got to somewhere where we'd never been. 2010 was incredible. I was there with some friends, and we had the best time of our lives watching New Zealand draw with Italy.
Italy nervous and desperate, but that's it. Quite astonishing. New Zealand have made the impossible possible.
And out singing the Italians was something to be remembered. But this is different. This is a better New Zealand team, some kids, young Bindon and Stamovic, and these guys are superstars. They're going to be superstars.
Stamovic's also in the Premier League, isn't he?
He's bought by Nottingham Forest, but being loaned out to Olympiacos, not getting any game time. He's a fabulous player. He'll get back to the Premier League at some point when he comes out alone. So we've got these players now, and they're making it easy for Chris Wood because they're delivering lots of good crosses. That we're hanging onto the ball. We're playing possession football. We're playing a completely different style because we've got 11 players outside of New Zealand really playing around the world, and there'll be the odd Kiwi that gets in there.
Things have changed. We've got 2 professional football teams in the Australian League. There seems to be a resurgence. Is that your feeling? Do you read it that way?
Yeah, this shift is enormous. Look, we've all been Phoenix fans for the last 17 years, and that's sort of ebbed and flowed. What we're seeing this year with Auckland FC, and not taking anything away from Phoenix, is something completely on a different level. There's a real atmosphere and energy at those games. It's just fantastic, and I think, some of the Kiwis playing there, like Nando Pinecker, De Vries, Poulsen and goal. I mean, those guys are starters for the All Whites potentially. So, what an opportunity. But they don't have to go and play in Greece or Austria or, these second-tier football countries. That A-League right now, where they're playing, is pretty competitive, and it's a great preparation. And it's a different landscape right now than what it has been in the last. So in the last 5 years, things have really shifted.
Because the other thing I find interesting about Auckland is that some of the investors are from other sports. Ali Williams from rugby, Stephen Adams from basketball. There seems to be this general lifting of football. I mean, did that come with holding the Women's World Cup here, or was it going on before then?
I think the Women's World Cup didn't hurt, obviously, because it was obviously well supported. I think that's had dramatic effects for the women's game in terms of participation overall. And I mean, if you read the stats, everything's up. So it was a good feel for football. And I think what you're getting now is with why the 14,500 people went to watch Wellington, Phoenix and Christchurch, for goodness sake, that's just unheard of. And the All Blacks probably wouldn't get that at the minute in Christchurch. So it's a massive shift, and there's it's a different energy at a football match when there's 15,000 there and they've got songs and they're singing. Ali's right in the middle of it, clapping and cheering, and he's just absolutely in his element, and it's such an exciting thing to see. So, yeah, they've if they could win the A-League this year, and that would do amazing things for all of the pathway too, because there's a women's team coming next year and a development team, and all of those football ferns are actually wanting to play for the Auckland team because they know that franchise it's successful, whether it be hockey or rugby or whatever it might be, they're winners.
And speaking of winners, back to
Chris Wood with the opening goal for Nottingham Forest.
Executed, top quality from Chris Wood. He just gets enough on that ball.
It's Chris Wood, back post.
Winners, and it goes towards Chris Wood. Gets the all-important touch. And might just have won the game for Nottingham Forest. Hasn't been on long. Chris Wood has made a massive difference.
If you're scoring goals in the English Premier League, the fans will love you. They will forgive you for missing a penalty or doing something stupid. If you're scoring goals, they will absolutely love you, and they will make songs up and they will worship you. And as long as you keep winning and scoring, you're a hero. And right now, it just doesn't seem like it's going to stop.
Yeah.
86 goals. He's got 14 away till he gets to 100. I'm sure with another 2 years added to his contract, 12 games to go this year, he'll get to his 100 pretty easy. And he becomes an elite club there. But he's there anyway. Let's face it, 80 games for your country. He's an Olympian. He's won that Player of the Year thing about 10 times now, I suppose.
That's more than you.
Yeah. Well, who better to lose it to?
And do you think it's got to the stage yet that he sort of can't leave the house without being recognised, or is it all pretty low-key?
No, he would be definitely walking the streets being hounded, I think. It's...
No wonder he comes back.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's a good getaway And he's got family here, of course. He would not be able to walk down and have a coffee on the corner, that's for sure. He's in a city which is football mad. They've had great success. He's a superstar.
That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. This episode was produced by Gwen McClure and engineered by Jeremy Veal. Thanks to Matthew Nash and Noel Barkley. I'm Alexia Russell. Ka kite anō.